The Las Vegas Raiders are moving full speed ahead with their search for a new head coach and general manager, both crucial roles in guiding the team toward a Super Bowl. They are focused on figuring out the right leaders for the job, and it's likely they'll have everything sorted out in the next couple of weeks. However, there's some interesting news to consider. A recent report reveals that the Raiders have made a huge contract offer to Ben Johnson, and this could be a game changer. Mike Florio shared the news, mentioning that talks between the Raiders and Johnson have been heating up. He also highlighted how Tom Brady played a key role in bringing the two sides together. But what really caught attention was Florio's mention of the big offer the Raiders made to Johnson. While the Raiders have not yet had an in-person interview with him, rumors suggest that they've made a strong financial pitch. This news is definitely intriguing, because landing Ben Johnson would be a big deal for the Raiders. But it's not just about the money. They have to convince him that joining the team is the right move. Initially, people might have wondered why a coach like Johnson would want to come to the Raiders, especially when other teams have star quarterbacks like Caleb Williams with the Bears, Trevor Lawrence with the Jaguars, and Drake May with the Patriots. The Raiders, on the other hand, have Aiden O'Connell and Garner Minshew. But after thinking about it more, it's clear that it's not only about the quarterback. There's a lot more that the Raiders can offer. When considering a coaching job, the strength of the offensive line and defense can be just as important, if not more so, than the talent at quarterback. An offensive coordinator knows that if they can work with any quarterback, whether it's Aiden O'Connell or Gardner Minshew, they can succeed in turning the offense around. But it's the defense that often makes or breaks a team's overall success. Perhaps this is one of the things Tom Brady has convinced Ben Johnson of, showing him the potential for success with the Raiders, especially if the defense comes together. Maybe, just maybe, Ben Johnson has already decided to take the job. According to Mike Florio, a solid source in the sports world, the Raiders have made a contract offer to Johnson. While Florio himself admits it's a rumor, it's worth noting that his reports carry more weight than your typical Twitter gossip. This kind of rumor, coming from a respected journalist like Florio, usually means there's more to the story. Yes, technically the NFL season isn't over, and official contracts can't be signed yet. However, behind the scenes, these types of offers and discussions often happen much sooner than the public realizes. It wouldn't surprise me if the Raiders have already extended an offer to Ben Johnson, and it doesn't stop there. Ian Rappaport, another respected name in the industry, has also shared some intriguing information. He's reported that, according to other coaches and agents involved in the hiring process, the Raiders' job is basically already locked in for Ben Johnson. That's big news, and it suggests that the Raiders may be closer to making their decision than anyone expected. Let's dive into the discussion. Ben Johnson is quickly becoming one of the top candidates for multiple coaching positions around the league. There's growing buzz in NFL circles, from agents to other candidates, that Johnson is the leading choice for the Raiders. While the process isn't complete yet, and official hires can't be made until after the season ends, it's clear that the Raiders are heading in his direction. According to Ian Rappaport, it seems all signs point to Ben Johnson becoming the next head coach of the Raiders. This adds more weight to Mike Florio's report that a significant contract offer has already been made. The combination of these two sources strengthens the belief that Johnson is on his way to Las Vegas. Other candidates who are also interviewing for head coaching roles have even hinted that the job is essentially already Johnson's. If the Raiders do land Ben Johnson, it could be a game changer for the franchise. A strong head coach can often turn a team around, even if the roster stays the same. Honestly, I believe that if the Raiders had Ben Johnson at the helm last year, with the same roster and if the team stayed healthy, they would have made it to the playoffs. A fresh, strong leadership can really flip the script for any team. Having a great coach can make all the difference, and we've seen this with examples like Andy Reid's impact on the Kansas City Chiefs. Before Reid came to Kansas City, the team wasn't a Super Bowl contender, but under his leadership, the Chiefs became a powerhouse, winning multiple championships. A strong, talented coach can turn a franchise around, and with someone like Ben Johnson at the helm, the Raiders could experience similar success. With the right leadership, the Raiders could make the playoffs consistently and build long-term success. Another interesting point about the Raiders' situation comes from an article by Pro Football Focus. They ranked all 32 NFL teams based on their off-season assets, taking into account things like draft capital, cap space, and contract decisions. According to this ranking, both the Patriots and the Raiders stand out at the top. The Raiders, in particular, are in a great position compared to many other teams, and this is something not to be overlooked. The chart itself might not matter much to everyone, but there's a key factor that should catch attention. The Raiders have 27 pending free agents. While some might see this as a negative, a new general manager could look at it as an opportunity. With so many contracts up for renewal, the Raiders will have the flexibility to make moves, reshape the roster, and build a team that suits their vision for the future. A new head coach or general manager could see the Raiders' situation as a big opportunity. With $125 million in cap space and 27 free agents, the Raiders have a unique chance to shape the team in their vision. Unlike some other teams that are stuck with bad contracts, the Raiders haven't overcommitted to big free agent deals. Yes, they signed Christian Wilkins to a major contract, but he's proven to be a game changer on the field when healthy. Max Crosby is also locked in, and the Raiders will have decisions to make on players like Malcolm Coe and some of their defensive backs and linebackers. The flexibility the team has right now is a huge plus for a new coach or general manager. Compare this to teams like the 49ers, who have aging players with contracts locked in for years, or the Saints, who have struggled with dead cap for the past few seasons. The Raiders are in a much stronger position to make changes, build a competitive roster, and take control of their future. This kind of situation could also be a factor in Ben Johnson's interest in joining the Raiders. He would have the freedom to make his mark. Finally, there's an interesting tidbit from ML Football, who shared a tweet that caught a lot of attention. According to the tweet, the Raiders may have unintentionally drafted the wrong Byron Young. Apparently, they called the Rams pass rusher Byron Young before the draft, but when it was their turn to pick, they ended up selecting the other Byron Young instead. This could be a pretty interesting mix-up in the draft process for the Raiders. This whole situation is certainly intriguing. While we can't say for sure if this is 100% accurate, there's a rumor floating around that the Raiders might have accidentally drafted the wrong Byron Young. You might remember that there were two players with the same name, Byron Young, one being an edge rusher from Tennessee and the other a defensive tackle from Alabama. According to the story, the Raiders called the edge rusher, Byron Young from Tennessee, and told him they were going to draft him. But when the Raiders made their pick, they selected the defensive tackle from Alabama instead. Some are speculating that the Raiders mistakenly submitted the card for the wrong player. If this is true, it would be quite the surprise, but it's certainly possible. Going into the draft, the Raiders already had Max Crosby and Chandler Jones on the roster, although they knew that Jones wasn't a long-term solution. They also hadn't seen much from Malcolm Coe, who didn't play much under the previous regime. With a big need at the edge rusher position, it makes sense that the Raiders might have wanted to draft a second defensive end, possibly intending to select Byron Young from Tennessee. However, they may have ended up selecting the wrong one. Of course, we'll never know for sure if this was the case. There's also another report, though it's not fully confirmed, suggesting that the agent for the Tennessee Byron Young has mentioned this mix-up. Whether this turns out to be true or not, it certainly adds an interesting twist to the draft process for the Raiders. There's another report out there suggesting that the Raiders may have reached out to the wrong Byron Young. While they intended to draft the defensive tackle from Alabama, they apparently contacted the edge rusher from Tennessee instead. Again, we can't say for sure if this is true, but the rumor has been circulating. Some people believe that the Raiders accidentally picked the wrong Byron Young, which would certainly be an odd mistake to make. Looking back, when the Raiders first selected the defensive tackle from Alabama, I wasn't convinced it was a great pick. I watched his tape and couldn't quite understand how they used a third-round pick on him, especially when there were other options. Unfortunately, it didn't work out, and he was released earlier this season. He later signed with the Philadelphia Eagles, but he hasn't played much for them, remaining a healthy scratch and dealing with injuries. On the other hand, the Byron Young that the Raiders might have wanted to draft, the edge rusher from Tennessee, has been performing well for the Rams. He's been a solid starter, picking up multiple pressures in recent games and playing a big role in the Rams' success. While it doesn't impact the Raiders directly anymore, it's interesting to consider how things might have turned out differently if they had picked the right player. At this point, we don't know if this draft mix-up is true, but it's worth thinking about. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you think Ben Johnson is likely to be the Raiders' next head coach? Is that a done deal? And what do you think about the Byron Young situation? Do you think the Raiders really made a mistake? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and I'll see you next time with another video.